Well, we've been watching that story of Canada and the U.S. as measured through the latest tariffs. U.S. President Donald Trump's 10% tariff on Canadian aluminum imports taking effect over the weekend. We have already heard from some Canadian officials on the retaliation plan from Canada, but let's get some more perspective now that this has taken effect from Kirsten Hillman, who is Canada's ambassador to the U.S. Ambassador, thanks very much for being with us this morning.
Thanks, John. I'm happy to be here.
There's a large conversation taking place right now about how this issue gets resolved. Take us behind the scenes on the kinds of conversations you've been having and what you think comes next.
So down here, I've been having conversations with the White House, with the U.S. administration, with USTR, with our allies on the Hill, from both parties. As well as many industry representatives, the vast majority of which, over 97% of the U.S. aluminum industry opposes these tariffs. So we've had a lot of conversations around that, having them work with us to explain to the administration that this action is bad for U.S. consumers and it's bad for U.S. manufacturers.
If 97% of the industry is against this, why, in your opinion, is this happening in the first place?
Largely that's for the administration to explain. I think my sense is that they're responding to the protectionist requests of a very small segment of the industry, two companies, in fact.
Two companies, and obviously a lot of people talk about how close we are getting to the U.S. election. I'm sure this comes up a lot of times when you're having conversations, not necessarily with the administration itself, but when you're talking to people. It's hard to ignore the fact that we are getting pretty close to the election. We were talking earlier about how the Democratic National Convention kicks off this week. How do you think that will continue to play into this Canada-U.S. relationship? The fact that you have candidates on the campaign trail and actions can be taken in part sometimes to appeal to voters.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. But I think that ultimately what matters is getting the facts out there. And I think that the facts, maybe not immediately, but in time, lead to the right decisions. And the facts, as I say, the facts here are that this action is bad for U.S. manufacturers. It's raising their costs. It's making them less competitive. It's raising the cost for consumers at a time when they need it the least, when we're all consumers in the U.S. and Canada and around the world are suffering. So I think that ultimately those facts will prevail. It just may take us a little while to get those messages through.
And that's what a lot of people are wondering as well, the timing on this. Earlier in the program, we spoke to the head of the Aluminum Association of Canada, who obviously represent a lot of big players, including many who, to your point, have said they oppose this. But it sounds like as a group, they are fully expecting this to be an issue that does not get resolved before the election. What's your best guess on how long this conversation is going to have to continue?
Yeah, I think it's really hard to say. I think that our job here, or my job here in the U.S., is to make sure that our allies and have all the facts, that the administration has all the facts, and that we respond forcefully. We respond forcefully to this inappropriate and unfair action, and we defend the Canadian aluminum sector. And that's what we're doing. We're consulting right now on a retaliation list of products that we will pick from in order to impose dollar for dollar countermeasures. And those countermeasures are designed to, get the attention of U.S. consumers, U.S. lawmakers, and of course, doing that only in a way that minimizes the impact on Canadians.
Ambassador Hillman, is there a need to also use this as a case study on what else could potentially happen. You know, I think a lot of people thought, wow, we got to the finish line of this new North American free trade deal. We can put some of these trade tensions behind us. And here we go again, talking about this very specific issue. But what's to say there isn't some other issue that pops up over the next few weeks or the next couple of months that felt perhaps like it had been resolved with the new trade deal. So how are you going to navigate the potential unknowns, if you will?
Right. So rule-based trade is essential to Canadian stability, economically trade stability, both with the United States and around the world. We are a rule-based trading nation. And part of being a rule-based trading nation means that when the rules aren't being followed, we respond forcefully. We respond clearly. We don't, as the Deputy Prime Minister likes to say and often says, we do not escalate, but we do not back down. And that's the whole point of having a rules-based system. And we have to make sure that we operate within it and that we are strong. And ultimately, you know, it works very well for Canada. And I'm confident that it will here. It just will require us to stand up for our industry, to stand up for Canadians, and to respond in a very strong manner.
And if you, at the end of the day, had to take this issue and then wrap it into the general Canada-U.S. relationship right now, how would you describe the state of the relationship?
Well, so this issue, as I've said, I think is wrong-headed and is regrettable and is hurtful to Americans. But that being said, the Canada-U.S. relationship is based on the thousands of interactions that we have with Americans every day on economic and business and trade issues, but also on security and also our militaries and our shared waterways and you name it. And what I've seen here over the past several months as we've been dealing with COVID and what I've lived is a very strong cooperation, not just with the administration writ large, but with the White House in particular. We've worked really closely together with the COVID task force, the President's COVID task force, the Vice President's COVID task force, and DHS to manage the restrictions at our border, to work on our supply chains, to make sure that they're working for PPEs, to make sure that our other supply chains are working as best they can as we seek to have an economic recovery. So the relationship is strong, and it's built on many, many, many different aspects and many different conversations every single day. But part of a strong relationship is being able to stand up and defend yourself and state your position clearly when you don't agree. And we don't agree on these tariffs.
So this is a story we'll watch continue to unfold. I mean, you mentioned COVID, and we recently saw an extension of the border closure between the United States and Canada. I imagine you're talking all the time with counterparts in Washington about this issue. What can you say about the nature of those conversations, especially when, I think a lot of Canadians are watching the situation in the U.S. with some uncertainty, and yet we're trading partners, and having an open border is a great economic opportunity, but there are health worries. What can you say about the nature of the conversations you've been having as people wonder about the border story going forward?
Right. So I have probably one or two conversations a week with the White House and Department of Homeland Security on our border writ large and the restrictions that we have on the border. We share information. We share information on what is working. If there are things that need to be, fixed, we talk about that. If we have different communities that are expressing frustrations, we talk about that. And we assess that in the light of the health information that we have and the guidance that we're getting, because Canada, and we've said this, and I say this every time, Canada will be making its decisions based on science and expert advice. In relation to all aspects of managing COVID, including the border. And the collaboration with the U.S. government has been exceptional.